Thank you, Michelle. So my name is Hannah. I'm from Avalon, California. Oh, I'm also the career peer educator for Oasis. Shouldn't forget to mention that. I'm a Marshall student. I'm a third year cognitive behavioral neuroscience major, double majoring in business psychology.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fisayo. I am a 2XL mentor. I am a cognitive and behavioral neuroscience major and a design minor. I'm from ERC and my hometown is Lagos, Nigeria.
Hi, everyone. I'm the student coordinator. My major is also cognitive and behavioral neuroscience. My hometown is Fontana, so it's this little town near Riverside, and my college is also Ravel. I won't be as much presenting during this during the workshop, but I will add some stuff throughout.
Okay, cool.
If you didn't catch her name in the beginning, her name is Sasha. I think it skipped out a little bit. But we're going to go ahead and continue. So welcome to the Lab Outreach presentation. Thank you guys all for tuning in. We understand that right now is a really difficult time and we're living through a lot of craziness. So we really appreciate your time being here and investing in us and your own futures. As Michelle said, we have done this presentation in the past, but this is the first time we're doing it virtually. So with virtual things, there comes technical difficulties. Just please bear with us if that does happen. With that, we are going to be keeping everybody muted. If you have a question, please drop it in the chat, or if you wait till the end, we do provide a Q&A section. So keep your questions for the end because that'll help us out. Other than that, please make sure you sign in and then we'll go ahead and begin. So I'm going to ask you guys to respond in the chat just a little bit, but if you could answer these two questions. What does it mean to do research? And what do you think of when you hear about somebody working in a lab? I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to respond in the chat for me. Anyone?
And just know, I know this is like super awkward doing this all online and virtual, but the more you help us out just by writing in the chat or giving us comments, the less awkward it is for us. So we'd appreciate it.
Okay, well, since y'all don't want to talk in the chat, we'll just go ahead and continue, but keep these questions in mind while we're going through the presentation, okay?
Okay, so research is formally defined as the systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. So that's from the Oxford Dictionary. Research typically follows the scientific method, which includes observation, hypothesis, experimentation, analysis, and a conclusion. So that might seem like a lot of big words, but overall research is just the investigation into a topic in order to reach new conclusions. And it typically follows the process of the scientific method, which you might have heard of in your classes.
So what does it mean to do research? First and foremost, research is not all STEM. It's not all beakers and chemicals and explosions. It can really be anything. So something that you are interested in, you can research. Whether, so like I said, chemistry and biology are probably one of the main ones that come to mind, but you can do research in business and marketing. You can do cognitive psychology research, which is a lot of what we have done. You can do design research. More specific examples are cancer research. If you want to work in marine biology, you can do animal research or ocean temperature research, language development, PTSD treatment. There's really so many different fields of research that you can go into. So what do you think of when you hear of somebody working in a lab? With this, we're going to go ahead and transition into telling you guys about our lab opportunities that we've been honored to be a part of. So I'm going to share a little bit about mine to start. I worked in NEAT Labs, which is an ACTRI at the UC San Diego Hospital. It's a cognitive psychiatry lab, as it says. When I began searching for a lab position, I wasn't actually searching for a lab position. One of my friends was talking about it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. How do I get involved? And she said, oh, just go on the NEAT Labs website and look for the PI. Her name's at the bottom, and just email her. And her email is listed on the website. And I was like, okay. So I went and emailed her, and we'll show you a few examples later on in the presentation. I emailed the PI, which stands for Principal Investigator, if you don't know. And she said, let's set up a Zoom meeting. And I was like, okay. And I completely forgot we set up a Zoom meeting, so I completely missed it. Luckily, please don't follow in my footsteps because most people don't get a second chance. Luckily, she gave me a second chance. So we set up the second Zoom meeting. It was a really quick conversation. It had good flow. And at the end, she's like, yeah, I'd love for you to become an RA or research assistant in my lab. And she said that her lab manager would reach out to me. So I got all trained up and everything. And I was with the lab for 2 or 3 quarters. I don't remember. But for me, it was a super easy experience finding a lab. Most people don't have that. That is not super common. A lot of labs are really competitive. I just was really lucky in finding mine. Oh, sorry, I didn't talk about what we do in the lab. So in my lab, we ran EEGs, and that was our patient interaction. So we set up these weird brain caps. I should have put a picture on here of what it looked like. And then the participant played games for 45 minutes, and then I took the cap off and they left. So it was a very quick interaction, not very much patient interaction other than I get to play with their hair, which is kind of weird, but it was good.
Okay, so this is my research. I'm currently in the UCSD Emotion Lab, and this is a social psychology lab. So essentially we look at social interactions and see what we could learn about different facets of that, such as empathy, emotion, pride, like a lot of different things. So the mission statement is to investigate empathy and emotion in social interaction. So how I joined the lab was I first sent an email to the principal investigator, AKA the PI. I said that I was interested in doing my honors thesis with the lab, and we'll get into what an honors thesis is later on in the presentation. But I said I was interested in doing an honors thesis in the lab, and then he got back to me about a week later saying like he'd be interested in doing an interview with me. So our interview was physical. So I went to the interview and it went well. We talked about a lot of different things pertaining to the lab and like what my interests were. And then after the interview, in about 2 weeks, he got back to me saying that I was accepted into the lab as an honor student, which we will get into. So essentially in the lab, like we just video record people having conversations, and then we measure things like empathy, pride, physiological measures as well, like taking their blood pressure, sweat levels. And then the lab duties include managing and training research assistants, collecting and analyzing data, coding, and brainstorming research ideas. So, I mean, overall, it's a really nice lab. I love it. If you're interested in empathy and emotion, like, you should definitely join. I've gained a lot, I've learned a lot, and it's also a very hands-on lab too.
Hi, sorry if I get cut off while I'm like talking, but so my lab is the comparative cognition lab. I've been in the lab for maybe 3 years now, or 2.5. My research study is in social cognition, so we do a lot of experiments around campus. So you might have seen us at some point, but that's more specifically what I do. The lab does work with non-human animals, so like primates, bonobos. They go to the zoo and do really cool stuff. So that's fun. And they do also work with children. So you go to preschools and you learn more about like their behaviors or certain certain cognition and interactions that they have. So what I specifically do is I run SONA as well. So it's more specific towards psychology majors. You join or you go into a lab and then you do an experiment and you get like credit for it. But I also train RAs, I code, I collect data, and I also collaborate with other RAs. So how I got involved, I emailed the professor. It was a little bit late into the quarter. So I actually got in contact with him and ended up taking one of his classes. And I got to know him more in that way. I went to his office hours and I talked about my interests and how the lab aligned to that. So he kind of invited me into the lab, and then we went over to a lab meeting, and then he went over some of the stuff that they do. And that's how I found this specific experiment. So it was a long process. I also am a lead. So the process for that, you're first a research assistant, and then if you get a lead role, you do more managerial work. So that's where it comes in, where you train RAs, you help do other stuff, help manage the specific study or project.
Yeah, so how would you go about getting a lab position? So as we mentioned, through Hannah, Sasha, we all had different ways about getting a lab position. So we wanted to list some of them out here. So checking out different professors' labs websites is a cool way to see what labs are available, what positions are available. Emailing professors directly, they're not always responsive, like the PIs, because they're running the whole lab, but usually grad students or lead RAs would get back to you sooner. Networking, such as going to career services events, going to events in your major, talking to your friends, talking to other people that you know. Taking a class with a professor and going to their office hours, as Sasha said, that was a good way for her to get to know the professor better and get to understand his research better. Coffee and dine with a prof, if you haven't heard of that. I don't know how to explain that actually. Hannah, could you explain that, the coffee dine with a prof?
So each college provides a certain amount of coffee and dine with profs each quarter. I think each student gets one a quarter, and they pay for you to go have a meal with a professor up to a certain amount. And so it's free food for you, it's free food for the professor, and you can initiate conversation in that setting where you guys are both already benefiting from it. So it makes it a little bit more friendly.
Yeah. And essentially it's just a way for UCSD to encourage you to get to know your professors better. So it's definitely a very win-win situation. And then going on websites such as Handshake, Real Portal, and more, which we'll get into later as well. So here are example emails that you can send to a PI or a lab manager or a grad student saying or stating your interest in joining the lab. So these emails are actually from Hannah and Sasha. Essentially, you just have to follow a format, a very simple format. I mean, you don't have to stick to it directly, but it helps to follow this format. The first thing you should do is give a brief introduction, when you're doing icebreakers in a class, your name, your major, and then whether you're interested in saying what specific opportunity you're interested in the lab, whether you're interested in a volunteer opportunity or interested in doing your honors thesis or just being a resident assistant. It's good to be specific about what you want in the lab. And then the next thing you do is in the next paragraph, just talk about your interests and then the interests of the lab and how they relate. So what that means is before you send an email, you should have gone to the lab website and learned a lot about what the lab's interests are, what they've studied in the past, what they plan on studying in the future, the papers that they've published, and then see if those interests align with yours. If they do, then this part of the email would be a lot more organic because you're just talking about what you're interested in and then how it relates to what the lab is interested in. So this is a very critical part of the email because, like, you know, lab managers, grad students, PIs, they're very busy. So if you're just brief and to the point about like what you want from them, then it goes a long way. That being said, this email should be short. It shouldn't be too long so that they can just read it quickly and understand what you want from them. At the end of writing what your interests are and how they relate to the lab interests, you should also say that you've attached your resume to the email. Don't forget to actually attach your resume as well. And yeah, so as you can see, it's pretty like short. You could take a screenshot of this if you want as well. And when we upload it to YouTube, you still have access to that. But this is a like good format to follow when you want to send an email. And also, if the PI is not getting back to you, what I would suggest is emailing the PI and like a lab lead or a PhD student in the lab, and they would probably get back to you sooner than the PI. Or if the PI doesn't respond at all, like they would most likely get back to you.
Yeah, and just to touch on that a little bit, you have the option to send a cover letter as well as your resume. This email is short and sweet, just like a cover letter should be. And the only time I would say to include a cover letter as well is if you have more relevant experience that you want to touch on, just not in the initial introduction email. So if this is going to be your first time in a lab, like it was mine when I sent this email, then you can include a little bit more relevant experience than I have in one of the examples, but you can also include a cover letter instead if you would like. Cover letters also go a long way.
Yeah.
They express your interest in a different way than just an introductory email would. But like I said, it's very optional. You can also see in one of the examples, it says that a copy of my most current transcript. You don't need to send your transcript unless they request your GPA. So if they don't request it, you don't need to send it unless they ask for it. Just don't.
Yeah. And even on the websites, they usually say like, if you're interested in joining the lab, make sure you send us like either your transcript or your resume or a cover letter. So usually they would specify, but if they don't, just I would say veer away from attaching your transcripts, but definitely attach a resume and a cover letter if you can. And also, I do want to say that when I first joined a lab, like I didn't really have any relevant experience. So I didn't really have much to put on the resume. I didn't want to just put random stuff. So I would say like most of my information came from my cover letter and from my email, because I just talked about what my interests were overall, like what I want to do in the future, and just talking about like my interests and myself. And I feel like that also goes a long way if you don't have any experience.
Yeah. But if you don't have a resume, come see me. Or a cover.
Yes.
We can drop that. I've got you. We can drop my Calendly somewhere during this presentation.
Yeah.
But one more thing on this, you don't need to mention it in your emails, but I forgot to mention it earlier, is when we say make sure your interests align, there are so many labs on campus that work with animals, including rats, in which case you may have to kill rats as part of your research. If that is not something you are comfortable with doing, make sure you look into the lab before going into it, because some of them might just be like, oh yeah, here, go do a dissection of this brain, and it's a mice brain. So like, just make sure if you have to work with mice or rats in any capacity that you are well aware of it ahead of time.
Yeah. So overall, do your research before you send this email.
Yes.
And also, don't worry if you don't have experience, because we all kind of started at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we all started going into these labs with no experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so now to some of the nitty-gritty stuff. We're going to go into each of the websites that I have seen as beneficial to finding labs or internships as well. So you can look at these websites, okay? First off is the Real Portal. The Real Portal offers hands-on research experience that is usually on campus. If it's not on campus, then it's at a UCSD associated facility. It's really easy to navigate. Use filters, use keywords, just as you would with a Google search. Like, it's very, very easy. They can be paid positions as well as count for credit. So there will be a symbol to the right, and it'll say whatever it counts for credit for. So some of them will say psychology 199, or it'll say biology. That just means that it's already approved to count for research credits towards your major. Next is going to be Handshake. Handshake is our biggest job finding resource on campus. This is where people reach out to the Career Center and to UCSD posting their job listings. So with that, they usually are looking for UCSD or UCSD-like students. So these places, while they are competitive because you're competing with everybody at UCSD, are looking for students like you. You put in your GPA, I think it actually takes your GPA for you from your transcript, which is kind of weird. Also your year and your major, and it will try to find ones that match up with you so that it's super easy to apply. What I love about Handshake is half of them are apply at the click of a button. So you upload your resume and press apply and you're applied. That's it. Some of them require a cover letter, and those are generally a little bit less competitive because if you're like me when you went looking for a job, every time I saw a cover letter, I was like, nope, pass. So that happens quite often, honestly. I wrote a cover letter for this job, don't worry. But there's jobs from San Diego to New York to even abroad. So when you're searching through Handshake, make sure that you put where you want to be, whether that's home for summer or whether that's in San Diego during the school year. Make sure you put what place, because you might end up applying somewhere in Massachusetts and you don't want to be there. All right, so third is the academic internship program. This and the Real Portal overlap a lot. The academic internship program is a little bit harder to get to, but once you get there, it's just as easy to navigate using keywords and filters. So below are the steps to get to the search area. You go to aip.com or .ucsd.edu, press search for an internship, then click on internship search, and then you start your searching. So it's a lot of different little buttons to click. But this is going to generally be where, like, if you're on the Real Portal or AIP, these can lead you to the lab websites already. It'll lead you there right off the bat. It'll just have a little link that you press. As you can see on here, it says not qualified for some of them. You don't need to pay attention to that all the time, because on mine, when I'm searching through this, it says I'm not qualified for NEAT labs, even though I've already worked there. So definitely don't always pay attention. If you are really interested in a lab, then shoot your shot. What's the worst that could happen? Like, if they just say, sorry, you're not qualified, then you're like, okay, well, I had a warning of that ahead of time. But like I said, don't always pay attention to it because they're not always accurate.
Yeah, and that also applies to like lab websites too. Like if they say like we need this GPA requirement, some of them are very strict, like they need that or you're not getting an interview, but a lot of them, like, you could still apply and they'll look at you holistically to see like whether you're a good fit for the lab. So do not fret, just apply.
That's very true. Most of the lab websites include an email, and you can just email them and be like, oh, hi, I heard about your lab, and you don't have to tell them you ever saw the website or the requirements. Yeah. Just say, I've heard about it and I'm super interested. I know a lot of times second years, especially from what I have seen, want to get involved in labs. And for some reason, 90% of the labs here are like, actually, we only want third years. But it's not true. A lot of them are perfectly fine with having second years as well. So don't be afraid to apply whenever, just by, like we said, emailing them. Bypass these application options in that case. If it says you're not qualified, and just email them and be like, hi, I'm a second year, I'm super interested, and just see what their response is. Yeah. So we're gonna move on. Last but definitely not least is the department pages. This is an example of the psychology department page. And when you go to your department page, on the left side, there's a row that says a bunch of things. It's like list of faculty, and one of them is research. So that literally lists a bunch of different research opportunities that are available to students within that major, of course. So not every major has this, but most of them do. If your major in particular does not have this, then go under faculty and staff and read the bios and go to the websites of faculty and staff and look at their websites and their research individually, because they might not have it listed, but they might still need people. And that's a great way. You can go to their office hours, you can do dine and coffee with a prof, and you can go talk to them, get your face known, and if they need you, they'll be like, oh yeah, they definitely showed initiative trying to find me and get this position in the lab.
Yeah, there's so many labs on campus, so like just shoot your shot, honestly.
Definitely.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about research opportunities that are more structured, that are, programs hosted through UCSD. So we've talked previously about like reaching out on your own about joining a lab, but there are also research opportunities that are structured, like structured programs at UCSD. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the psychology honors program, because I am in this program. So this program prepares you to work on your own research project under the guidance of a faculty mentor. So it's a 2-year program that starts in your junior year and then finishes in your senior year. So it's a pretty long program. Overall, you apply your junior year and then you take courses that prepare you to do your own research. And then in your senior year, you carry out a year-long independent research project. And then you have a faculty mentor, of course, and then you have to write an honors thesis and also present at a presentation in spring quarter. So that was a lot of information, but essentially it's just a program that allows you to do your own independent research and then also have a mentor to guide you. So as I mentioned with my lab, I reached out to the PI to be my faculty mentor for my honors thesis specifically. So you join the program without necessarily having a mentor. And then over time, when you figure out what you want to study, and then when you learn about what other PIs are doing, then you reach out to a PI and ask them to be your mentor for your honors thesis. In general, I really have enjoyed this program. Like, it's very, very tasking, but also very rewarding. Like, it gives you a lot of independence, and it also prepares you for graduate school. Just the amount of independence it gives you in terms of your research, like I think that definitely prepares you for how grad school is going to be. And what else? Yeah, that's about it. Also, honors programs also exist in other majors. Like, it's not just psychology, but they're probably might be different, have different setups, have different requirements. For this program also, there isn't necessarily like a GPA requirement. I mean, they have like GPAs that they would prefer. And then they also look at your grades in some specific classes. But overall, it's like they're not hard requirements. Like, if you don't have them, you can't apply. Like, no. They look at you from a holistic standpoint, like your leadership, your interests, and just your zeal for research. And then, yeah. I highly recommend if you're interested in like doing research independently. So if you're a sophomore right now, you would apply your fall quarter of your junior year. And then we also have the Trident Research and Experiential Learning Scholars Program, aka TRELS, which you might have heard of. So there's a TRELS quarterly, and then there's a TRELS summer research. So these programs are also very independent, where you have a research idea, and then you reach out to a mentor to like be your mentor for the research, and then you apply for TRELS. So it's kind of different from like the honors program in terms of like you have to already have an idea of what you want to study, and then you also have to have a mentor before you apply to the program. So it's really cool. You also get paid. So quarterly, you would get paid $1,000 to work on your project. And then you have to reapply each quarter. So it's not just something that continues. Each quarter, you have to reapply for the program. For the summer research program, it's 10 weeks and it's also paid. And I believe you get paid about like $5,000. It's from June to August. And if you're interested, applications open in winter 2020. Wait, no. That was winter 2020 was last quarter, but usually they open in the winter. Yeah. And then we have AEP, which is academic enrichment programs. Most of these programs are summer research. So there's the URS, American Heart Association, STARS, and so many more. So UCSD really wants you to get to, do research. And it's nice when you have these programs because there's just a lot of guidance, and you get to go through research from beginning to end. So typically if you join like independently just as an RA, it might look different, but when you're in these programs, like typically you're learning how to do research from the beginning stages to the end stages, and they can be very rewarding.
So next we're going to go over McNair. The McNair program is one that runs throughout the academic year and into summer just a little bit. So you work as a research assistant during winter and spring quarters, and then for 8 weeks during the summer. You have to do 2 research conferences where you're presenting your work, as well as attending a series of events. You receive free GRE test prep courses if you get chosen for McNair. Those range from $500 to $1,000, so that's a great opportunity. This is a more structured and competitive program. Like it says, we only pick about 30 scholars a year, so that's definitely high competition. When you're working here over summer, they provide summer housing, and there may or may not be a stipend involved from what I think there is, but there's some questions about that. So you need junior or senior standing, so you can apply starting your junior year. The GPA requirement is a 3.0, and you need a letter of rec. So just make sure you have all of that, and then throughout the program, you get at least 12 units of research credits towards your major.
Yeah, and real quick, another thing I want to say about the programs that we just mentioned. Wow, I just lost my train of thought.
I have one as well, so
yeah, you could go, Hannah, and then if I remember.
So with a lot of these summer research programs, they sometimes have requirements where you have to be full-time research, which means you're not allowed to be taking classes during that time, and you're not allowed to be working another job during that time. So with that, make sure you plan your summer and your courses around that type of schedule, just so that you can still complete your degree on time, just in case. If completing your degree isn't an issue, then it's a lot less to worry about with taking summer classes and stuff, but it's definitely something to think about because that was something that surprised me.
Yeah. Going off of that, let's go back to TRELS. Like TRELS is an example of, like, if you do TRELS summer, you're not allowed to have like a job on the side. You're also not allowed to use your research for academic credit. So it's one of those things where it's like kind of separate from academic credit. So it's one of those things that you have to consider. Like, is this something that I want to do? How does it work with my 4-year plan? Things like that. And also another thing I like about these programs is the fact that you could study like anything. So any type of topic that you're interested in, you could do it. Except for like honors programs, obviously, which are specific to the department. And another thing about the psychology honors program is that it also includes cognitive and behavioral neuroscience majors. Yeah, because that's also a confusion for people. Sasha, did you want to say
I wish I could say a little bit more too, because I did URS. Yeah, I did URS. I wish I could say a little bit more, but it seems like I'm cutting off more often. But what she said, like the research could be done in anything. I was a CBN major, and I was doing like more of a sociology and education type of research. So it's really anything you want to do. There's a lot of opportunity for just any interest that you have, being able to do research with it, as long as you find someone that's really interested in a mentor.
And also, like, finding a mentor can seem daunting for these research programs, but it's honestly not as daunting if you just take the steps. Like, if you go on websites, if you talk to people, talk to your professors, like whether they know any professor that's interested in this topic or could be interested in being a mentor for you. So It's really just like networking and doing your research, and you'll probably find someone that's willing to be a mentor. There's so many professors that do research on campus, and a lot of them are willing to take you under their wing.
And don't be worried if you don't have your major figured out yet. These are still opportunities you can do. Like when I was doing them, I still wasn't 100% sure. So don't be afraid to try anything you don't feel like you're qualified.
Yeah. And then with your mentor, it has to be a faculty mentor. So it's a little bit confusing, but faculty and staff are different things on our campus. So make sure when you're thinking about faculty, it's generally somebody who is a professor in most cases with some other qualifications where they may not be a professor, or just a researcher. So professors and researchers for sure are good, but if you find somebody else, you need to ask if they're faculty.
Yeah, and typically they have to be either doing research or kind of interested in the topic that you're doing as well. So it can't just be like any staff that you know or any faculty that you know.
Yeah, definitely. So we do have a few tips. I had one more thing I was going to say, but I completely forgot. So I'll get into the tips, and if I remember, I'll tell you guys in a minute. But first and foremost, we've emphasized it a lot throughout this presentation, is read and learn about your professor and their work ahead of time. So whether that's reading their work or their research, talking to friends or people who work in their lab or the lab manager about them or about their research or what they do in the lab, all of those things are going to be great to make sure that you're where you want to be in that lab. Getting face-to-face time with your professor or with your principal investigator is honestly, I want to say crucial. Obviously, it's not mandatory, but getting that face-to-face time and making yourself a recognizable figure in their lives is going to make it so much easier for you to get that position, because then you're not just a resume and a name, you're a face, you're a person, you're a body. So definitely try to get face-to-face time. Like we said, coffee with a prof, any of that is going to help you. Going to office hours, talking to them after class, something like that.
Yeah, and face-to-face time also like lets you see whether this would be a good fit. Like it's really just not like you're trying to be their friend, but when you're meeting someone, you want to know like whether you guys will align well together in terms of just your personality, your interests, like all of that. And if it's a complete mismatch, then at least you would know if you met with them face to face.
Yeah, definitely. And with that, I know networking, especially with professors, is super intimidating. And this is a thing that I forgot that I said I'd come back to. But when you think about it, you're never going to move forward in life if you're staying where you're comfortable. So reach outside of your comfort zone a little bit. Don't be afraid to email them or ask them out for coffee with a prof. These are all things that are made to help you succeed. And most of the time, I'm not going to say all the time because we have some pretty brutal professors on campus, but most of the time, they're here to see you succeed, and they care about what work you can help with. Mm-hmm. And they care about what experience they can give you to put on your resume. So a lot of times, they're going to be very open to meeting with you.
Yes. And even if one isn't, you'll find another one that is. So
exactly. But with that, be respectful of their schedules as well. They are busy humans, just like the rest of us. So like we said, find a mentor, talk to friends, take a class that touches on the topic, or even if it's just a quick, like a workshop that touches on the topic, do something where you can make sure that's where your interests are. Look at your Triton career guide or come see me to make that resume or cover letter. And then, like we said, make sure your interests align, because if you're not there for the lab, then the lab's not going to be beneficial to you.
Yeah. And I also want to emphasize, like, when it comes to networking, even that word can seem very overwhelming, but if you just reframe what you think about when you think of the word networking, I think that can help as well. You're really just like getting to know the person. It's not necessary. Like if you think of it as like, oh, this is a step I have to take to get here, like try not to do that, because that could be very intimidating. But if you look at it like, let me just get to know this person and see what their interests are, see if they align with mine, like it could also reduce a lot of the pressure And yeah, making sure your interests align is really important so that you're not like wasting your time in a lab that you don't like. Yeah.
So ultimately, what's most important is you're doing what works for you, what interests you. It's nothing's going to benefit you if it's not what you want to be doing. So make sure this is going to be a beneficial experience for you.
Yeah. And even outside of interests, like I remember when I went for my interview, I asked my PI how many hours he would expect of me, how involved I would be involved in the like day-to-day processes of the lab, like just the amount of requirements that I would have, to see if that aligned well with like my schedule and my other requirements. So that's another thing too.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a little bit of time for questions if you want to unmute your mic. If you don't, then I have a few pointers to hand out to you guys. But you can also use the chat if you're not comfortable speaking.
Please ask questions.
Okay, if y'all don't want to ask a question, I'm gonna go up.
Wait, give him like 2 minutes or 1 minute. What are your plans for the future? How do these opportunities fit into your plans? That's from Jenny.
Do you want to speak on that, Fisayo?
Okay, I'll speak on that, but I hope I don't confuse anyone any further. So as I said, I'm in a social psychology lab, right? I'm learning about emotion and empathy. In terms of my future, I'm really interested in design and just the design of products, the design of experiences, the design of tech. And I think it aligns well because when it comes to design, you have to be very in tune with like your empathy for other people and what they need in a product, what they need in an experience. So I feel like learning about empathy and emotion and how people deal with each other has helped me a lot in terms of when I'm applying for user research jobs. Like I could speak on the fact that I've learned so much about people and empathy and how that can relate to the design of products in the future. So yeah, thank you for that question, Jenny.
We have a question from Persephone saying, do all labs generally require you needing to know how to code? I can speak on that a little bit. While Fisayo and Sasha both did some coding in their labs, in my lab, it depended on the position. So if you didn't know how to code, they're not going to put you in a coding position. There are coding positions in NEAT labs as well as just the patient interaction positions, which was my research assistant position. But no, not all labs require coding experience. It is recommended a lot of times, but if you don't have it, then you can still find a lab on this campus. It's not a problem.
Yes, I agree. Then there's another question from Pedro. How will these opportunities be affected by COVID? Yeah, that's the issue I'm having right now because like I've been trying to get in contact with, I've just been having issues in just the whole communication thing, and it's understandable because we're all like busy, we're all affected by COVID in different ways. So I don't know, I'm kind of worried about how my honors thesis is going to play out because there's a lot of data I still have to analyze and I still have a lot of work to do in terms of my thesis. So I hope everything works out, but it's definitely been affected.
Yeah. So I can also speak on that a little bit more. When you are looking for a research position or internship position right now, use the keyword virtual. Virtual or online are going to be really helpful right now. A lot of people are posting them. Another resource you can use, and I'll put it down here, is coveintern.com. And I can't type.
Oh, I didn't know about that. That's cool.
So coveintern.com is a resource that compiled a bunch of online internship opportunities. There's not so many in the medical field. So if you're going the medical route anywhere in medicine, go ahead and follow HealthBeat. which is the Career Center's health services or health medicine services. They have compiled a Google Doc of a bunch of different internship opportunities that are online and get you clinical hours for being in a health profession. So HealthBeat is on Instagram and Facebook. Also, I highly recommend you guys just go check out the Career Center website to see any resources they might have on the website. Tell your friends, but we do virtual career peer advising right now, so you can come see me, and you can also schedule with anybody at the Career Center.
Go see Hannah.
Yeah, please come see me. Also, quick shout out, we are doing a LinkedIn workshop on Tuesday. So if you want to tune into that, that's something that's really going to help you with your networking, which we were talking about is pretty intimidating. LinkedIn is an amazing resource for not only networking, but finding internships during this time. I have seen so many students post, I just lost my internship due to COVID, and I'm really looking for an opportunity. It's imperative. I'm going into my last year, freaking out. And you look at the comment section and it's like 300 recruiters being like, send me your resume. And they're trying to get these people positioned. So it's a really welcoming community. It is intimidating. I can tell you, I only have 60 connections on LinkedIn, and I know students who are still at UCSD as well who have 500. So it's a process and it's intimidating, but once you get there, it makes it a lot easier to network through LinkedIn and gain those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. I would say also that I know a lot of opportunities right now are stalled or they're not happening. I think people are just trying to adjust like the rest of us as quickly as we can. So that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, lab positions won't exist anymore. It just means they're currently in the adjustment phase. So I would say just hang tight, and maybe if you do have labs that you know you're interested in or faculty that you know you want to work with, just emailing them and saying, hey, I'm really interested in working with you. I know things are up in the air right now. Do you know what the plans are going to be for the future? And I think that's a great way to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like you should definitely still reach out, regardless of the situation that we're in, and just see what they could do or see any other like opportunities that might exist.
Definitely. And when you're talking to them, obviously list what your main interest is, but right now you may want to expand a little bit because it may be a little bit harder. So find something where you can still gain relevant experience, even if it's not directly correlated to your exact profession. So when I was working in NEAT labs, I told her, hey, I just declared a business psychology major as well as my cognitive behavioral neuroscience. And so she put me on about a 4-month marketing project. So I was doing that all virtually as well. I could work from home back then, even before all of this started. So there are definitely opportunities where these labs will kind of work around your schedule a little bit, or whatever your circumstances are. Just give them a little more substance, where you may want to go into cancer research and you're dead set on that. Well, maybe go into another type of research just to be in a research setting or be doing data analytics for that lab or something like that, just so you can still have that relevant experience to put on when the labs reopen.
As long as you're interested in it though.
Yes.
That's still key.
Definitely.
Cool.
If you guys are able to, how many people are in here? So can you reply yes in your participant section if you want me to paste the HealthBeat Google Doc that shows all the medical field internship opportunities? Okay, let me see. I'm gonna try to find it really quick before you guys all get off. Okay. So hopefully this is open to everybody. I don't know if it is yet, but there's the link. It's long and ugly, I'm sorry. So if it's not open to everybody, then I'll try to copy and paste it and I'll have somebody send it out, okay? Other than that, thank you for being here with us today. we're gonna start closing up. If you guys still have questions, feel free to post them in the chat or ask out loud. But please give us some feedback on our feedback link here.
Thank you all for showing up today.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. That happens all the time. Yeah, so make sure to give us some feedback, and thank you to Hannah, Fisayo, and Sasha for presenting. They worked really hard on this, and I'm sure, you know, if you want to talk to them personally or to myself, I'm sure there's a way that we can link up to discuss maybe your plans for research if you want to get into it, or if you're already in research right now. Feel free to utilize us as resources. And yeah, and thank you so much for dropping by. I hope you all are okay. And sending you all a hug. I know it's crazy right now, but wishing you all the best. And thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
I'm going to
you.
go ahead and stop the recording.